Okay, are we good to start? Is the recording ready to go? Awesome. So I do have fun on this. So I took a writing course with my undergraduate at one point, and we learned about formal and informal writing and how when teaching students of different cultures or ethnicities or home lives or whatever, that to teach them the difference between the way you talk at home and the way you would like talk at church. And that was the example that they gave us. And so I connected that to this reading um, more because when it talks about the dominant cultural capital, I think is the right words, um, it was talking about, the white people way of doing things. This is how you talk, this is what you do, this is the ABC step of applying to college or writing a resume or doing an interview, versus the non-dominant cultural capital of like what I would always reference as informal, like just kind of the other people way of doing things, which is horrible, but that's the best I could come up with to like explain that side of it. If it's not white, then it's the other way of doing things. It's kind of what the reading was saying. So
Yeah, so I primarily teach in a Hispanic setting for my classroom. And like for us, I think just like we talk about every week, I feel like just bringing in that culture in the classroom, but also making sure that you're having culturally responsive resources in your classroom. So can they see themselves in the literature that you're reading? Can you talk about their culture's history? What else can you do so that they don't feel excluded and that because I know that in one of the readings it talked about like bringing in like the heroes and holidays, and that just wasn't very effective. So I think as teachers, figuring out how we can actually really value their culture and how they can see themselves in the curriculum.
I've talked a good bit about my experience, and it's not so I take it outside of curriculum sometimes because it's a lot of the relationships that you have with the kiddos. Um, they've come to call me Miss Turk now. Turkey in their culture means butt, and I just go with it. I answer it, and it seems like they respect me now more for it. Um, so it's just kind of adapting, not just to their culture and curriculum, but in the classroom, the language, the um, senses that they put off, when you can and cannot joke around with certain things. Um, So I don't think, to me right now, it's not all straight curriculum. A lot of it to me right now is building the relationships, because we're having such major behavior problems that the first thing I need to do is have that relationship. And me being white and all my kids being black, I have to connect to them somehow because they see color still. So it's not just curriculum for me. A lot of it is the relationships and kind of almost talking like them. That sounds like so horrible. Does that sound horrible? That sounds horrible to me because I feel like it's two different worlds, but it kind of is. But it's just almost like adapting to it.
I love the idea of bridging the gaps between different cultures, or different communities, rather, which then does lead to different cultures. Um, uh, I'm going to go back to Tiffany's story. My kids looked at me this week, last week, whatever, and they were like, Miss Riddle is savage. And I was just like, I guess I'm just gonna call you on your crap. And they just like looked at me and they're like, but I do, like, I didn't quite say it that way, but like they know I'm not gonna let them sit there and get away with things that they try to pull because I like pay attention to it. But then I also take like I have a large black population in both of my classes, and I have in every classroom that I've taught in. And they are loud. So am I. Like, I could be just just as loud and just as whatever. And I think the difference is I've watched other teachers get frustrated with the stereotypical black student because they're loud or they get up or they use different things. And I'm like, but why? Like, if you can live with those things, then you can teach those. You can teach what you need to teach without forcing them to conform to the white way of doing something. And I think that's a big part of building, at least specific to this question, black capital in classroom, is just not forcing them to have to be white, and letting them just be. And I think that that's important. And it's important to them from what I can tell. So I think that's encouraging. And even I've had students whose home language is like Farsi. So they're from like Pakistan in that area, and like encouraging, or they all speak Spanish, and just encouraging their language instead of forcing them to only use English. Like, and it's like a novelty to them because they don't hear, well, no, this is a good thing. Like, keep it. Like, here are all of the things you can do with it. This is awesome. So I've found the importance of celebrating them for who they are, and giving, value to who they are as people, and to value their culture and their languages and their such on and so forth.
Sorry.
So I teach in a extremely low socioeconomic school. 94% of our student population is on free or reduced lunch. And I think it's been kind of challenging for me just because there have been so many times where my kids are like, well, I can't afford to get pencils. I can't afford to get paper. I'm like, why? Like, that's like 50 cents. You can do it. And then, of course, it's like trying to get those like preconceived notions out of your head and being like, okay, wait, maybe you actually can't. And so I think just being able to really come from a place of support and care rather than just assuming that, oh, well, they're just being lazy. They just don't want to get it, blah, blah, blah. Like thinking again about, oh, actually, maybe they can't afford it. Maybe there is stuff going on that you don't know about. So I think really taking a brand new approach to it is how I handle it. It's been really hard, though.
I feel like from an academic standpoint, acknowledging that they might have other things on their mind, but to still hold them to a high, like, not like necessarily a higher standard, but even a higher standard, but to at least the very same standard that you're holding all of your other students to. Like, okay, yes, I acknowledge, yes, there are going to be rough days, but you still have a job to do. And I think that if there's that, kind of helping them figure out how to navigate the world in poverty, but still holding themselves to a higher expectation. Because I feel like what happens is that they get really comfortable, not that they're comfortable, but that they get comfortable with not having those high expectations and being able to just kind of focus on all of the other things instead of learning how to successfully manage all of it. And I think that as an educator, our job is to teach them, okay, how can we balance this? What can I do? Okay, maybe I don't assign you homework, but I do expect you to do all your classwork. go get breakfast, before you come to class, and we'll take care of it that way, if you haven't eaten, kind of thing. But that there still is an expectation that when you come to school, you're at school, and making school a safe place where they feel like they can kind of forget momentarily what they have to go home to, and that, okay, we're at school, we're at work, we're at a different home, we're at our second home. This is what we're going to do, and here's why doing this is important. I think sometimes it comes down to that expectation piece of, oh, well, we'll just expect the minimum, or we won't expect them to be able to do X, Y, or Z. And it's like, well, no, they can. They have the ability to. It's just maybe they don't have the tools in which to do so. And so then I think where we step in is, okay, well, here are some tools, here are some strategies, here are some expectations that I have for you, but reasonably so.
I think, like, kind of going off of that, sorry guys, my connection's in and out, but it's kind of like students, like, they get a reputation, throughout their time in school. And I'm sure in big towns, but I mean, I know for sure in my small town, you've heard the same kid's name from kindergarten to fourth grade. By the time it gets to fifth grade, they're like, oh, we know who so-and-so is. And I think sometimes that even gets them, off, that didn't set them up for success, because they already had this whole reputation with them, which probably some of it is from their own doing. But I think if teachers had, kind of just that fresh slate, even with every child, that would help that for some of those kids.
So we do a program at our school called Check In, Check Out. Mainly it's a behavior intervention that we do for our kiddos, but it goes back to that homework aspect, the schoolwork aspect. So they go into the neutral person in the building. It's not allowed to be a teacher. It could be a security monitor. It could be our curriculum coach. It could be anyone in the building, as long as it's not one of their teachers. They go in the morning, check in. This person kind of like builds them up if they came with some negative attitude already. Make sure they have all their supplies they need, their pencils, whatever they need. Our school is 100% free lunch, so we're full. We're really low poverty at our school. And our principal has said since day one, don't fight kids over pencils. And it's kind of hard because I came from a private school where my parents made sure I had everything I needed. I mean, we had full on straight uniforms, all that kind of stuff. So for me to wrap my mind about what these kids are going through, it's really hard. And I used to be like, why don't you have a pencil? You need a pencil for class. And it's just go down the office. I get a handful every morning. You need one? Get it. And you would see that change from the kids, that they know they're not going to be reprimanded because they didn't come prepared. It's like, okay, go up to the cup, get a pencil. Sorry, I digressed from my original statement. For the check-in, check-out form. So they go in the morning, check in with their mentor, whoever they're meeting with. They get them prepped up for the day. And then we fill out this form every single class. Did they come to class prepared? Were they respectful, and were they responsible for all the work? And then by the end of the day, that mentor again, they go in with all their homework assignments if they have any, and they just go through like, okay, this is your goals for when you go home tonight. And it kind of, it's like a walking, talking planner almost. And it's just that extra, because a lot of our kids, their parents work a second shift at night. I've stopped giving homework actually because it would never, like I would say probably 90% of my kids wouldn't do it. So I've just learned to build that into my curriculum. That if this assignment I know would take 1 hour to do and I only have a 40-minute class, well, I plan it for 2 days and then the other kids get a jump start on something different. But it's just us learning that it's okay, that it's not going to go in order how we were raised or how we were taught. It's we have to do whatever the kids need.
I know something that my district does is in each of our buildings, we have like well, they're called like kids closets. So basically a parent can come in anytime, whatever they need, like their kids, like an underwear, shoes, or stuff like that. We also have an organization called Neighbor to Neighbor, and their big thing is to help families get on their feet. And their big thing is not like a handout, but it's kind of to help them learn how to finance and kind of be able to, not live maybe paycheck to paycheck, but really be able to live comfortably and be able to kind of survive. Really impacted our community in a positive way. A lot of they take pride in something that's like kind of done privately, but like when they, when kids come to school, they have like a new outfit on, like they feel good, little things like that just like can change even their day and then like their learning. So
Have you guys ever heard of the website called Donors Choose? Yeah, we use that a lot in our school. We're constantly on there. One of our things that we do is half of our building has heat and the other half doesn't. And some of our kids, we have a dress code, and some of our kids can't afford to get a solid crew neck sweatshirt. So what our team leader has done is made a Donors Choose where she has like 30 different size sweatshirts that the kids could come borrow any day they need it. They borrow it for the whole school day, and then they give it back to her. And then what she does at the end of the week is she takes it down, um, to our special education department, and the kids that are in what's the name of that class? Life skills. They actually wash them for us. So they go through the class of learning how to do laundry, all that kind of stuff, and it comes back up to us. Start a fresh week. So that's something that we use donors choose a lot at our school, just to get the funds for the things that we need, even if it's markers, because we don't really get that kind of stuff.
Oh, I just think like what you said about the American dream, I think it's changed so much. I think now, before it was like you went to school, you went to college, you got a job, and now a lot of high schools are looking for, just having you get the tools to be a successful citizen, go to a trade school, go to, just get a job, and I think that's kind of also skewed a little bit, kind of the education. I mean, I know Kansas has the redesign and program and stuff, and how really students should be, do they just want to prepare them to be a good citizen and a good worker, not necessarily to say, okay, you need to pass this so you can get into the school, so allowing students that to really do what they want to do and what works for them.
Sorry, I'm running around my house. A lot of breath, going through like 10 flights of stairs. But there's this book called, I don't know if you guys could see it, Savage Inequalities. Most amazing book I've ever read. Huge thing, especially I think for, I'm sorry guys, I'm really out of breath. Huge thing for if you're in like Matthew, for you to read to your kiddos, because you would never ever imagine that this is the real world. It's about it says Causal has written a searing expose of the extremes of wealth and poverty in America's school system and the blinding effect on poor children, especially those in cities. In public schooling, he argues school policy during the Reagan Bush era has been turned back almost 100 years. It's a really, really good book.
So I really like the school funding and inequalities piece. Um, sorry, my brain is like all over the place. I definitely think that depending on what schools get funding for, it really depends on what a school's focus is on. And sometimes it's just to check a box and it drives me nuts. But I also think that, this module is about, poverty and racial discrimination and things like that. But I think even if you were to take that a step, kind of open it up, is that if there isn't funding attached to it, it's probably not happening. And I say that as one of my focuses throughout this entire degree program has been, okay, how are we um, working with our focus students? And when you think of my focus students are like our gifted children or our higher level kiddos that we spend a lot of time talking about what do we do for our students who are in poverty and our students who are in are discriminated against, and then we kind of tend to forget our friends over in the higher level of things, and there isn't a ton of funding for your higher level kiddos. There's a ton of funding for your lower level kiddos and your kiddos that can be found in impoverished areas or lower academics or whatever. And so I think that in certain areas, if there isn't federal funding coming for it, it's not getting addressed. And I think that we can shoot ourselves in the foot in both directions if we're not careful. So that's my little soapbox thing about that.
Well, I know from reading that book that Kozel wrote, he does compare. I was just trying to flip through it. I can't remember if it was in New York City or somewhere along the Mississippi. He compares a school that's divided by a river, and half of it, the one side of the river is extremely poor, and they get no funding, and the other side is almost like not a private school, but they get a lot of funding. It's state of the art type of thing, and it's just based on the populations that make up the communities of each side. I know with my school, we're considered a Title I school, which means that in the state of Pennsylvania, we're not meeting the standards like we're supposed to be meeting, and so the state is saying that it's the teacher's fault, and we don't have enough funding, we don't have enough supplies to teach our kids what they need to be taught. And they try to give us funding for certain things. So a huge push was through for science and technology. And that's great and all. We have an amazing STEM lab, but I also don't have enough seats in my classroom for all my kids. And we don't get funding for that. So it's kind of an odd thing because I'll go and I'll ask every school year at the beginning of school, I need more desks, or I need more chairs, or I need more tables. And the principal actually this year has taken a bunch of teachers over to one of our abandoned buildings, and we had to take out the really old stuff because we can't get any money through the Title I funds to help support our kids like they're supposed to. So it's a really slippery slope that they say that we need all these supplies and here's money for these supplies, but you can't get equipment or furniture. That's what the word is. We can't get any furniture, but yeah, we could get you a STEM lab and we could get you all this kind of good stuff, but you don't have enough seats for your kids.
just that next week I have to probably